The afternoon sun beat down mercilessly on Olivia Carter's bare neck as she watched her mother count the coins the wig maker had pressed into her weathered palm. Each metallic clink, a reminder of what desperation could make a person do. Just minutes earlier, Olivia had possessed thick chestnut waves that cascaded past her shoulders, the one beautiful thing she owned in this harsh world of 1878 Kansas. And now those locks lay bundled in brown paper on the wig maker's counter while her scalp felt strange and light beneath the rough cotton scarf her mother had quickly tied around her head. "It's enough for 2 weeks of rent and some flour," her mother whispered, tears streaming down her gaunt cheeks as they stepped out of the small shop on the dusty main street of Linden, Kansas. "I'm so sorry, my darling girl. I'm so terribly sorry." Olivia wrapped her arm around her mother's thin shoulders, feeling the sharp angles of bones that shouldn't have been so prominent. 6 months ago, her father had died in a farming accident, crushed beneath an overturned wagon, and since then their small homestead had fallen into ruin. And the crops had failed due to drought, the livestock had been sold off one by one to pay debts, and now they were left with nothing but a ramshackle cabin on the edge of town and the clothes on their backs. Her mother had taken in washing when she could, but her hands had become so arthritic that even that meager work was nearly impossible now. "Don't apologize, Mama," Olivia said, though her throat felt tight with unshed tears. "Hair grows back. We needed the money." But as they walked back toward their cabin, Olivia couldn't help reaching up to touch the rough fabric covering her shorn head. She'd never been a vain girl, but her hair had been her mother's pride, something her father used to run his fingers through while telling her she was beautiful as a sunset. Now it was gone, sold for survival, and she felt exposed and ugly as they passed other townspeople who stared with varying degrees of pity and curiosity. They were halfway home when a commotion near the livery stable caught Olivia's attention. A magnificent black stallion was rearing and bucking, his eyes wild with fear, while 3 men tried unsuccessfully to control him with ropes. The horse was clearly terrified, not vicious, and Olivia could see a deep gash on his flank that was bleeding freely. "Easy now," a deep voice called out, and Olivia turned to see a tall man approaching the horse with slow, measured steps. He wore dusty leather chaps over worn denim, a dark shirt rolled up to reveal tanned forearms, and a wide-brimmed hat that shadowed his face. "Let him go, boys. You're making it worse." "But Travis, he's going to run," one of the men protested. "Then let him run," the cowboy said calmly. "He's hurt and scared. Wouldn't you want to bolt if you were in his place?" The authority in his voice made the other men release their ropes, and the stallion immediately stopped bucking, though he still trembled with nervous energy. The cowboy Travis continued his slow approach, speaking in low, soothing tones that Olivia couldn't quite make out. There was something mesmerizing about the way he moved, confident but not threatening, respectful of the animal's fear. Olivia found herself stopping to watch, despite her mother's gentle tug on her arm. She saw Travis extend his hand, letting the horse smell him, building trust with infinite patience. Minutes passed, and gradually the stallion's breathing slowed. His ears flicked forward with curiosity instead of fear. When Travis finally laid his hand on the horse's neck, it was with such gentleness that Olivia felt something stir in her chest. "We should go," her mother murmured. "People are already staring enough today." Shame flooded through Olivia as she remembered the scarf on her head, and she quickly turned away. But in that moment, a gust of wind caught the loosely tied fabric and whipped it from her head, sending it tumbling down the street. Her hands flew up instinctively to cover her roughly shorn scalp, but it was too late. Several people nearby had already seen, and she heard the whispers start immediately. Poor thing, Margaret must have sold her daughter's hair. Desperate times, I suppose. What a shame, she had such lovely hair. Olivia's face burned with humiliation as she chased after the scarf, but it danced just out of reach in the wind. She was so focused on catching it that she didn't see the person in front of her until she collided with a solid wall of muscle and warmth. Strong hands caught her shoulders, steadying her, and she looked up into the most striking blue eyes she'd ever seen. It was Travis, the cowboy from the livery stable. Up close, she could see he was perhaps 25 or 26, with sun-weathered skin, a strong jaw darkened by a day's worth of stubble, and those remarkable eyes that seemed to look right through her. He held her scarf in one hand, having apparently caught it before she could. "I believe this is yours, miss," he said, and his voice was as warm as honey. Olivia snatched the scarf from him, her hands trembling as she tried to retie it over her exposed head. She couldn't meet his eyes, couldn't bear to see the pity or disgust she was certain would be there. Her fingers fumbled with the fabric, made clumsy by shame and the tears that were threatening to spill over. "Here, let me help," Travis said softly, and before she could protest, his hands were gently taking the scarf from her. But instead of immediately covering her head, he paused, and she felt his gaze on her shorn hair. This was it, she thought. This was where he would recoil, where he would say something kind but hollow, where she would see in his face that she was diminished. "It'll grow back more beautiful," he said instead. And there was such quiet conviction in his voice that Olivia finally looked up at him. His eyes held no pity, no disgust, only a warm certainty that made her breath catch. "Hair is just hair, miss. It doesn't define you, and it certainly doesn't define your worth." He tied the scarf gently around her head, his calloused fingers surprisingly deft, and when he was done, he gave her the kindest smile she'd ever received. "There, though I meant what I said, you don't need it to be beautiful." Olivia felt heat rush to her cheeks that had nothing to do with shame this time. "Thank you," she managed to whisper, then turned and hurried back to where her mother was waiting, her heart beating far too fast in her chest. That night, lying on her thin mattress in the cabin she shared with her mother, Olivia couldn't stop thinking about the cowboy's words. "It'll grow back more beautiful." He'd said it with such certainty, as if he could see a future she couldn't yet imagine. And the way he'd looked at her, not at her missing hair or her shabby dress or her work-roughened hands, but at her, had made her feel seen in a way she hadn't experienced since her father died. "Olivia?" Her mother's voice came from the other side of the thin curtain that separated their sleeping areas. "Are you awake?" "Yes, Mama." "I'm sorry about today, about everything." "I know, Mama. It's all right. We'll get through this." But Olivia wasn't certain they would. The coins from her hair would last them a couple of weeks at most, and then what? Her mother was too weak to work, and Olivia's own attempts at finding employment had been unsuccessful. Women's work in Linden was scarce, and what positions existed were already filled. They were running out of options, running out of time. The next morning, Olivia woke early and walked into town, determined to find work of some kind. She tried the general store first, but Mr. Henderson already had his niece helping him. The boarding house had no openings. The restaurant needed a cook, but Olivia's limited skills weren't good enough. By midday, she was exhausted and discouraged, sitting on a bench outside the church and trying not to cry. "You look like you could use something cold to drink." Olivia looked up to find Travis standing before her, holding out a tin cup filled with water from the town pump. He'd apparently just come from work somewhere, because his shirt was damp with sweat and there was dust coating his boots and chaps. "Thank you," she said, accepting the cup gratefully. The water was cool and sweet, and she drank it down quickly. Travis sat down on the bench beside her, maintaining a respectful distance, but close enough that she could smell leather and horses and something else, something distinctly masculine that made her pulse quicken. "I'm Travis Vaughn," he said, removing his hat and setting it on his knee. "I don't believe I properly introduced myself yesterday." "Olivia Carter," she replied, then added, because it seemed important somehow, "and thank you again for your kindness yesterday. It was a difficult day." "I imagine it was." His voice was gentle, non-judgmental. "Are you having a difficult day today as well?" Something about the sincere concern in his voice broke through Olivia's defenses, and before she knew it, she was telling him everything. About her father's death, about the failed crops and sold livestock, about her mother's arthritis, and her own failed attempts to find work. The words poured out of her in a rush, and Travis listened without interrupting, his blue eyes focused intently on her face. When she finally fell silent, embarrassed by how much she'd revealed to a virtual stranger, Travis was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "I might know of something. It's not traditional women's work, but I think you could do it if you're willing to learn." "What is it?" Olivia asked, ready to agree to almost anything. "I work at the Vaughn Ranch, about 5 miles outside of town. It's my family's place, though my father passed last year and it's just me and my younger brother running it now. We've got about 200 head of cattle, some horses we're training to sell, and more work than 2 men can handle." He paused, turning his hat in his hands. "We need help with the horses especially. Someone to help gentle them, feed them, clean the stables. It's hard work, and it's not pretty, but it pays decent, and we could provide a small cabin on the property for you and your mother if you're interested." Olivia's heart leaped with hope, then immediately sank. "I don't know anything about horses. I've never worked with them." "I saw you watching me with that stallion yesterday," Travis said. "You understand them instinctively. I could see it in your face. The way you recognized he was scared, not mean. That's something I can't teach someone, not really. The rest, the practical skills, those you can learn." "But I'm a woman," Olivia said, voicing what seemed like the obvious objection. "People will talk." "People are already talking, aren't they?" Travis's voice was matter of fact, not unkind. "At least this way you'll have a roof over your head and food in your belly while they gossip. And my brother will be there as well, so it's not improper. We'd set you and your mother up in the old foreman's cabin. It's small but solid, and there's a good stove." Olivia wanted to say yes immediately, wanted to leap at this opportunity like a drowning person grabbing a rope. But years of being a proper young lady made her hesitate. "Why would you do this for us? You don't even know me." Travis was quiet for a moment, and when he spoke, his voice was thoughtful. "My mother died when I was 12. Pneumonia took her one winter, and there was nothing we could do but watch her fade. After she was gone, people helped us, brought food, helped with the ranch work, made sure my brother and I had what we needed. My father never forgot that kindness, and he taught us to pass it along when we could." He looked at her directly. "You need help. I can provide it. That's reason enough." Something in Olivia's chest loosened, some tight knot of fear and shame that had been strangling her for months. Here was a lifeline, offered without judgment or expectation of anything improper in return. She would have been a fool not to take it. "Yes," she said. "Yes, I'd like to accept your offer, thank you." Travis's smile was bright as sunshine. "Good. Can you be ready to move out to the ranch by tomorrow afternoon? I'll bring a wagon for your things." "We don't have many things, Olivia admitted. "But yes, we'll be ready." They discussed the details, the wages he'd pay, the work she'd be doing, and all the while Olivia felt like she was in a dream. Yesterday she'd been at her lowest point, selling her hair just to survive, and now she had employment and housing and hope. It seemed too good to be true. When Travis finally stood to leave, tipping his hat to her politely, Olivia called out, "Mr. Vaughn, wait." He turned back, eyebrows raised questioningly. "Why did you say that yesterday, about my hair growing back more beautiful?" Travis considered the question seriously. "Because it's true, but also because I could see you needed to hear that it was just a temporary thing, not a permanent loss. Sometimes we all need someone to remind us that hard times don't last forever." He paused. "My brother and I, we went through some lean years after Ma died. There were times we weren't sure we'd keep the ranch, but we did, and it's thriving now. Things get better if you hold on long enough." That evening, when Olivia told her mother about the job offer in the cabin, Margaret Carter wept with relief. They spent the rest of the day packing their meager belongings, which filled only 2 small trunks and a few boxes. Olivia also spent time explaining to her mother who Travis Vaughn was, though she found herself dwelling perhaps too long on his kindness and the way his eyes crinkled when he smiled. "You're smitten with him," her mother observed with a small smile. "I'm grateful to him," Olivia corrected, but she could feel heat rising in her cheeks. "There's a difference." "Of course there is, dear," her mother said, but her tone suggested she didn't believe that for a moment. The next afternoon, Travis arrived with a sturdy wagon pulled by 2 strong draft horses. His brother was with him, a young man of about 20 with similar features, but brown eyes instead of blue. Travis introduced him as Timothy Vaughn, and he greeted them with friendly politeness as he helped load their belongings. The ride out to the ranch took about an hour, and Olivia spent most of it trying not to stare at Travis as he drove. He pointed out various landmarks along the way, told them about the history of the area, and asked Margaret gentle questions about her arthritis that suggested he genuinely cared about her well-being. Timothy rode his own horse alongside the wagon, occasionally interjecting jokes that made even Margaret laugh. When they finally arrived at the Vaughn Ranch, Olivia was impressed despite herself. The main house was a sprawling 2-story structure built of good timber, with a wide porch and real glass windows. The barn was large and well-maintained, and she could see several corrals where horses grazed peacefully. Everything spoke of prosperity and good management, which made Travis's offer of employment even more puzzling. Surely he could have hired any number of men with actual experience. The foreman's cabin Travis had mentioned sat about 100 yards from the main house, nestled among a grove of cottonwood trees. It was indeed small, just 2 rooms and a lean-to kitchen, but it was clean and solid, with a good roof and sturdy door. After 6 months of living in their dilapidated homestead with its leaking roof and cracked walls, it seemed like a palace to Olivia. "I had Timothy's wife come out yesterday to give it a good cleaning," Travis said, as he helped carry their trunks inside. "Sarah also left some supplies in the kitchen, just basics, to get you started. We take our main meals up at the big house, and you're welcome to join us, but I figured you might want your own space, too." "Your brother is married?" Olivia asked, surprised. Timothy had seemed so young. "A year now," Travis confirmed. "Sarah lives in town with her parents still, comes out on weekends. They're saving up to build their own place on the eastern section of the property." Once they were settled, Travis gave them a tour of the ranch. He showed them the main barn where the cattle were kept during harsh weather, the smaller stable where they worked with the horses, the chicken coop, and the vegetable garden behind the main house. Everything was impressively organized, and Olivia could see the pride Travis took in what he and his brother had built. "We'll start your training tomorrow morning," Travis said as they walked back toward the cabin in the golden light of late afternoon. "Early, I'm afraid. Ranch work starts at dawn." "I'm used to early mornings," Olivia assured him. "My father was a farmer. I know about dawn work." Something shifted in Travis's expression, a new respect in his eyes. "Good. Then I think you'll do just fine here, Miss Carter." That night, lying in a real bed with a full stomach for the first time in months, Olivia felt tears of gratitude slip down her cheeks. In the other room, she could hear her mother's soft snoring, relaxed and peaceful, in a way she hadn't been since father died. They were safe here. They were cared for. And tomorrow, Olivia would begin learning a new skill that might just give her a future. She woke before dawn to the sound of roosters crowing and found Travis already waiting outside her cabin, holding the reins of 2 horses. "Morning," he said with a smile. "I thought we'd start by introducing you to the horses you'll be working with most closely." The smaller of the 2 horses was a gentle mare named Daisy, with a coat the color of copper and kind dark eyes. Travis explained that Olivia would be riding her around the property as she learned the work. The other horse was a young stallion named Thunder, barely broken to saddle and still skittish around people. "He's going to be your main project," Travis said, stroking Thunder's neck. "He's got good bloodlines, strong and smart, but he's been mistreated. Previous owner thought the way to train a horse was to beat the fear into him. Didn't work naturally, and the man sold him to us cheap." Olivia approached Thunder slowly, remembering how Travis had moved with the black stallion in town. The horse's ears flattened against his head, and he pulled against his lead rope nervously. "It's all right," she murmured softly. "No one's going to hurt you here." She stood still, not reaching out, just letting Thunder get used to her presence. Travis watched silently, and Olivia was acutely aware of his gaze on her. Minutes passed. Thunder's ears gradually swiveled forward. His trembling eased slightly. "Good," Travis said quietly. "That's exactly right. You've got the instinct for this, Miss Carter. I knew you would." They spent the next several hours working with the horses, and Travis proved to be a patient teacher. He showed her how to approach them, how to read their body language, how to handle equipment safely. His hands guided hers as he taught her to check hooves for stones and to brush down a horse properly. Every touch was professional and appropriate, but Olivia found herself intensely aware of him nonetheless, of his warmth and his scent and the gentleness in his strong hands. By midday, she was exhausted but exhilarated. Travis led her up to the main house for lunch, where Margaret was already sitting at the large kitchen table with Timothy. Sarah had apparently come out from town and was serving up hearty portions of beef stew and fresh bread. "You must be Olivia," Sarah said warmly. She was a pretty girl with honey blonde hair and a friendly smile. "Timothy's told me all about you and your mother. I'm so glad you're here. It'll be nice to have other women around when I visit." Over lunch, Olivia learned more about the Vaughn brothers and their ranch. Travis was 26, had been running the property since his father's death 2 years ago. Timothy had just turned 21 and handled most of the cattle operations while Travis specialized in horse training. They ran a profitable operation, selling trained horses to the cavalry and to wealthy buyers as far as Kansas City, and their cattle herd provided steady income as well. "Travis is the best horse trainer in 3 counties, Cherie," Timothy said proudly. "People come from all over to buy his horses." "My brother exaggerates," Travis said, but Olivia could see the pleased flush on his neck. "He doesn't," Sarah insisted. "Travis has a gift. Animals trust him in a way that they don't trust most people." Olivia thought about how Travis had approached that terrified black stallion in town, how he'd gentled Thunder this morning with infinite patience, and she believed it. There was something special about the way he communicated with animals, a deep empathy that came through in every movement. The days fell into a rhythm after that. Olivia woke before dawn each morning and worked with Travis and the horses until lunch. Afternoons she spent on various ranch tasks, cleaning stables, mending tack, helping Timothy with the cattle when needed. Her mother, meanwhile, found purpose in tending the vegetable garden and helping Sarah with light cooking tasks on weekends. Margaret's hands were still too arthritic for heavy work, but she could shell peas and snap beans, and the activity seemed to lift her spirits tremendously. As the weeks passed, Olivia felt herself growing stronger. Her hands, already roughened by hardship, developed new calluses. Her arms grew lean muscle from handling hay bales and water buckets. Her skin browned from constant sun exposure. And gradually, slowly, her hair began to grow back, soft as duckling down at first, then thicker and darker than before. Through it all, she was constantly in Travis's company, and she found herself falling more in love with him with each passing day. It wasn't just his physical appearance, though she had to admit he was handsome enough to make her heart flutter. It was everything about him. The way he spoke gently to frightened animals, the way he checked on her mother without being asked, making sure Margaret had everything she needed, the way he laughed at Timothy's jokes and praised Sarah's cooking, the way he looked at Olivia like she mattered, like she was capable and strong and valuable. But Travis never crossed the line between employer and employee, never said or did anything that suggested he saw her as more than a ranch hand he was training. He was unfailingly polite, respectful, professional. And Olivia, who had no experience with courtship or romance, had no idea how to bridge that gap without risking the security she and her mother had found here. 2 months after they'd arrived at the ranch, Olivia finally achieved a breakthrough with Thunder. She'd been working with him every day, gradually building trust, and one morning he finally allowed her to touch his face without flinching. It was a small thing perhaps, but to Olivia it felt monumental. This creature who had been beaten and broken had chosen to trust her, had allowed her into his space. Travis, who'd been watching from the fence rail, let out a whoop of celebration. "You did it! I knew you could! Without thinking, Olivia turned and ran to him, her face split with a grin. Travis hopped down from the fence and caught her in a hug, spinning her around once before setting her back on her feet. For a moment they stood there, his arms around her waist, her hands on his shoulders, both of them breathing hard and grinning like fools. Then awareness seemed to hit them both simultaneously. Travis's smile faded into something more intense, and his eyes dropped to Olivia's lips. She held her breath, certain he was going to kiss her, desperately hoping he would kiss her. Instead, Travis stepped back abruptly, clearing his throat. "That's real good progress, Miss Carter. Your hard work is paying off." The moment was broken, and Olivia felt the loss of it like a physical ache. "Thank you for teaching me," she said quietly. "You're a natural," Travis replied, but he wouldn't meet her eyes. "I should go check on the south pasture fence. Timothy mentioned it might need repairs." He left quickly, and Olivia stood there in the corral feeling confused and hurt. She'd been so certain he felt the same attraction she did, the way he looked at her sometimes, the way he found excuses to be near her, the way his touch lingered just a fraction longer than necessary when he was showing her something. But maybe she'd been imagining it all. Maybe he saw her only as an employee, someone he'd helped out of charity, and the thought made her want to cry. That evening, Sarah came to visit the cabin, bringing a basket of fresh rolls from her mother's kitchen in town. Olivia's mother had already gone to bed, tired from a day spent preserving vegetables, so it was just the two younger women sitting on the cabin's small porch in the cooling twilight. "You're in love with him," Sarah said without preamble. It wasn't a question. Olivia considered denying it, but what was the point? "Is it that obvious?" "Only to someone who's looking," Sarah said kindly, "and I've been looking because I've noticed the way he watches you when he thinks no one's paying attention." Hope flared in Olivia's chest. "He watches me?" "Like you're the sunrise and sunset combined," Sarah confirmed. "That man is absolutely smitten, has been since he first brought you here, according to Timothy." "Then why doesn't he do anything about it?" Olivia demanded, frustration bubbling over. "Today I thought he was going to kiss me, and instead he ran away like I had the plague." Sarah sighed. "Because Travis is honorable to a fault. You work for him, Olivia. He provided you and your mother with housing and employment when you were desperate. In his mind, any romantic advance he makes would be taking advantage of the power imbalance between you." "That's ridiculous," Olivia said hotly. "I'm not some helpless damsel. I can make my own choices." "I know that, and you know that. But Travis has spent his whole life trying to live up to his father's example of being a good, honorable man. He's not going to risk making you feel obligated or pressured." Sarah reached over and squeezed Olivia's hand. "But that doesn't mean you can't let him know how you feel. Take the choice out of his hands. Make it clear that you want him to court you, that you're not just grateful to him." "How do I do that?" Olivia asked, feeling helpless. "I've never courted anyone. I don't know the rules." Sarah smiled. "There are no rules when it comes to love. Just honesty. Tell him how you feel. The worst that can happen is he doesn't feel the same way, and I can promise you that's not the case." Over the next few days, Olivia tried to work up the courage to talk to Travis, but every time she planned to say something, the words died in her throat. He was so good, so kind, so far above her in every way that mattered. What if Sarah was wrong? What if Travis did see her only as a charity case, and declaring her feelings would make everything awkward and ruin what they had? The opportunity came unexpectedly one evening when a storm rolled in across the plains. Olivia had been working late in the stable, finishing up some repairs on a broken stall door when the first crack of thunder shook the building. Rain followed immediately, a torrential downpour that turned the yard into a sea of mud within minutes. Travis appeared in the stable doorway, soaked to the skin. "You all right?" he called over the sound of the storm. "I'm fine," Olivia called back. "Just waiting for it to ease up before I make a run for the cabin. Might be waiting a while." Travis came deeper into the stable, water dripping from his hat brim. "These summer storms can last for hours." They stood there in the warm dimness of the stable, listening to rain hammer on the roof and watching lightning flash through the gaps in the walls. The horses shifted restlessly in their stalls, but none of them seemed truly frightened. Travis had trained them well. "I wanted to apologize," Travis said suddenly, "for the other day, when you had that breakthrough with Thunder." "You don't need to apologize," Olivia said quickly. "You didn't do anything wrong." "I did, though." Travis took off his hat, turning it in his hands the way he always did when he was uncomfortable. "I crossed a line. You work for me, and I shouldn't have hugged you like that. It was inappropriate." Something in Olivia snapped. All her fear and uncertainty crystallized into frustration, and before she could stop herself, she was speaking. "What if I wanted you to cross that line? What if I've been hoping you would for weeks now?" Travis's head jerked up, his eyes wide with shock. "Miss Carter, you don't have to say things like that out of gratitude or obligation." "I'm not grateful right now," Olivia said, moving closer to him. "I'm annoyed. You think so little of me that you believe I can't tell the difference between gratitude and genuine feeling?" "I don't think little of you at all," Travis protested. "The opposite, actually. I think you're remarkable. You're brave and strong and capable, and you've got more integrity in your little finger than most people have in their whole body. That's why I can't take advantage of the situation I've put you in." "You haven't put me in any situation," Olivia said. Her heart was pounding so hard she could hear it over the rain. "You've given me opportunity and respect and trust. And yes, I'm grateful for those things, but that's not why I think about you every moment of every day. That's not why I lie awake at night wishing you'd look at me the way I look at you." Travis stood frozen, his blue eyes locked on her face. "How do you look at me?" "Like you're everything I didn't know I needed," Olivia whispered. "Like you make me believe in futures and possibilities instead of just surviving day to day. Like I want you to kiss me so badly that I ache with it." For a long moment, Travis didn't move. Then he dropped his hat to the stable floor and closed the distance between them in 2 long strides. His hands came up to cup her face, gentle despite their roughness, and his eyes searched hers. "Tell me I'm not dreaming this," he said hoarsely. "You're not dreaming," Olivia assured him. "I'm really standing here telling you that I've fallen in love with you, Travis Vaughn." "Thank God," he breathed, and then he was kissing her. It was nothing like Olivia had imagined a first kiss would be, and somehow it was so much better. Travis's lips were soft but insistent, moving against hers with a hunger that matched her own. His hands slid from her face into her hair, which had grown out enough now to curl at the base of her neck, and the touch sent shivers down her spine. She gripped his shoulders, feeling the solid strength of him beneath her hands, and kissed him back with all the pent-up longing of the past 2 months. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Travis rested his forehead against hers. "I've been in love with you since the day I caught your scarf in town," he admitted. "Watching you chase after it with your head high despite everyone staring, despite everything you'd lost that day, I thought you were the most beautiful woman I'd ever seen." "Even without my hair?" Olivia asked, meaning it as a joke, but Travis pulled back to look at her seriously. "Especially without your hair," he said, "because it showed me who you really are underneath all the superficial things. Strong and resilient and unwilling to give up no matter what life throws at you." He ran his fingers through her short curls tenderly. "Though I was right about what I told you that day. It did grow back more beautiful." "That's because I've been happy," Olivia said, blinking back tears. "You made me happy, Travis. You in this place and the work and the hope of something better." They kissed again, slower this time, savoring it. Outside the storm raged on, but inside the stable it was warm and dry and perfect. When they finally pulled apart, Travis kept his arms around her waist, seeming reluctant to let her go. "I want to court you properly," he said, "with your mother's permission and everything done right. I know we've been working together for weeks now, but I want you to know that this is different. You're not just an employee to me, Olivia. You're the woman I want to build a future with. Olivia's heart soared. I want that too, more than anything. Then we'll talk to your mother tomorrow, Travis decided, and if she gives her blessing, I'd like to take you into town on Saturday. Have dinner at the hotel restaurant, let everyone see that I'm courting you officially. People will talk, Olivia warned, though she couldn't quite keep the smile off her face. Let them talk, Travis said firmly. I'm proud to be seen with you, Olivia Carter. The storm eventually eased to a drizzle, and Travis walked Olivia back to her cabin with his arm around her shoulders. At the door, he kissed her once more sweetly and gently before heading back to the main house. Olivia floated inside to find her mother still awake, sitting by the stove with mending in her lap. You look happy, Margaret observed with a knowing smile. I am happy, Mama, Olivia said, and proceeded to tell her mother everything that had happened in the stable. Margaret listened with shining eyes, and when Olivia finished, she reached out to take her daughter's hands. Your father would have liked him, she said softly. Travis reminds me of your father in some ways, that same quiet strength, that same kindness. Travis wants to court me officially, Olivia said. He wants to ask your permission tomorrow. He already has it, Margaret said. I've been watching the way he looks at you, sweetheart. That man loves you truly, and you love him. That's all I need to know. The next morning, Travis came to the cabin before dawn, nervous as a schoolboy, to formally ask Margaret's permission to court her daughter. Margaret gave it gladly, and also gave Travis her blessing to take Olivia to town on Saturday. The rest of the week passed in a blur of happiness for Olivia. She still did her ranch work, still trained with Thunder and the other horses, but everything felt different now. Every shared glance with Travis held promise. Every accidental brush of hands felt electric. Every moment working side by side was a joy instead of a longing. On Saturday afternoon, Travis drove them into Linden in the ranch's good buggy, pulled by a matched pair of horses. Olivia wore her best dress, a simple blue cotton that Sarah had helped her let out to fit properly after 2 months of good eating and hard work had filled out her too thin frame. Her hair, now several inches long, curled softly around her face, and she'd borrowed a ribbon from Sarah to tie it back. The hotel restaurant was the fanciest place in town, with real tablecloths and china dishes. As Travis had predicted, their entrance caused quite a stir. Olivia could see people whispering, could feel the weight of curious stares, but Travis kept his hand firmly on the small of her back and his head held high. He pulled out her chair like she was a fine lady, and ordered them both the special, which turned out to be roasted chicken with potatoes and gravy. Over dinner, they talked about everything and nothing. Travis told her stories about growing up on the ranch, about learning to ride before he could walk, about his mother who had loved horses as much as he did. Olivia shared memories of her father, of learning to tend crops in the hot Kansas sun, of the dreams she'd once had before hardship had made dreaming seem foolish. What did you dream about? Travis asked, his eyes intent on her face. Having a family? Olivia admitted. A home where people were safe and cared for? Maybe that sounds simple, but after Father died, even that seemed impossible. It's not simple at all, Travis said seriously. It's everything that matters. And it's not impossible, Olivia, not anymore. After dinner, they walked through the town square, arm in arm, and Travis bought her peppermint sticks from the general store. They sat on the bench where they'd first really talked, and Travis held her hand while the sun set in a blaze of orange and gold. I meant what I said in the stable, Travis said quietly, about wanting to build a future with you. I know we haven't been courting long, but I've never been more certain of anything in my life. I'm certain too, Olivia said, squeezing his hand. I know what I want, Travis. I want you. I want a life with you on that ranch, working with the horses, building something together. Then that's what we'll have, Travis promised, and he kissed her right there in the town square, with half of Linden watching from windows and storefronts. The months that followed were the happiest of Olivia's life. She and Travis courted properly, with chaperones when appropriate, and always with Margaret's approval. But they also worked side by side every day, which gave them far more time together than most courting couples got. They trained horses together, rode the range checking on cattle, repaired fences and buildings, and through it all, they talked about their hopes and dreams and plans for the future. Thunder, the abused stallion who had been Olivia's first major project, became fully gentled under her patient care. By late fall, he would eat from her hand, allow her to ride him, and responded to her commands with eager willingness. Travis was so proud he could barely contain it. And when a cavalry officer came to look at horses to purchase, Travis showed him Thunder first. "This stallion was broken when we got him," Travis explained. "Thought he'd never trust humans again. But Miss Carter here, she's got a gift. She brought him back from the edge." The officer was impressed and made an offer that was more than triple what the Vaughns had paid for Thunder. But when he named the price, Olivia felt her heart sink. Thunder had become hers in a way that went beyond ownership. He trusted her completely, and the thought of him going to a stranger made her ache. Travis must have seen something in her face because he turned to the officer and said, "I'm sorry, but this particular horse is not for sale. He belongs to Miss Carter." "I'll pay double what I offered," the officer said. "He's still not for sale," Travis replied firmly, "but I've got 3 other stallions that would serve you just as well, and I'll give you a fair price on them." The officer eventually bought 2 other horses, and after he left, Olivia threw her arms around Travis's neck. "Thank you," she whispered. "I know that was a lot of money to turn down." "Some things are worth more than money," Travis said, holding her close. "Your happiness is one of them." In December, 6 months after Olivia and her mother had first arrived at the Vaughn ranch, Travis took Olivia on a moonlit ride to the top of a hill that overlooked the property. From there, they could see the main house with its glowing windows, the barn and stables, the corrals where horses dozed peacefully, the small cabin where Margaret was probably already asleep. "My father proposed to my mother on this hill," Travis said, dismounting and helping Olivia down from her horse. "He said it was because he wanted her to see everything they'd be building together, everything their life could be." Olivia's heart started pounding as Travis took both her hands in his. "I'm not a fancy man," Travis continued. "I can't offer you cities or culture or an easy life, but I can offer you a home where you'll always be safe and valued. I can offer you work that matters and a partnership where your voice counts as much as mine. I can offer you my whole heart, Olivia, because you've had it since the moment I caught your scarf in town." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a simple gold band. "This was my mother's ring. It's not much, but it's all I have of her, and I can't think of anyone I'd rather give it to. Olivia Carter, will you marry me?" Tears streamed down Olivia's face as she looked at this good, kind man who had saved her when she'd had nothing, who had seen her worth when she'd felt worthless, who had loved her not despite her circumstances, but because of the strength she'd shown in facing them. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, Travis, I'll marry you." He slipped the ring onto her finger, and it fit perfectly, as if it had been made for her. Then he kissed her with a passion and tenderness that made her dizzy, and Olivia kissed him back with all the love in her heart. They were married in March, when the prairie was just beginning to green up after winter. It was a small ceremony in Lyndon's church, attended by Margaret, Timothy, and Sarah, a handful of ranch hands the Vaughns employed, and a few townspeople who had become friends. Olivia wore a simple white dress that Sarah had helped her sew, with wildflowers in her hair, which had grown down past her shoulders now in thick, glossy waves. When Travis saw her walking down the aisle, his eyes filled with tears. "You're so beautiful," he whispered when she reached his side. "So are you," Olivia whispered back, and she meant it. Travis wore a new suit that made his blue eyes even more striking, and his face was lit with such joy that it took her breath away. They spoke their vows in front of God and witnesses, promising to love and honor each other through whatever life might bring. When the preacher pronounced them husband and wife, Travis kissed her with such sweetness that Olivia heard several women in the congregation sigh. The celebration afterward was held at the ranch, with tables set up in the yard and enough food to feed half the county. People danced to fiddle music as the sun set, and Travis spun Olivia around until they were both dizzy and laughing. Margaret sat in a place of honor, her face radiant with happiness, and even Timothy got sentimental in his toast to his brother and new sister-in-law. "Travis has always been the best man I know," Timothy said, raising his glass. "He's worked himself to the bone, keeping this ranch going, and he's never asked for anything in return. So I'm real glad he finally found someone who sees how special he is. Welcome to the family, Olivia. We're all richer for having you here." That night, Travis carried Olivia over the threshold of the main house, where they would now live together as husband and wife. Margaret would stay in the cabin, which she'd come to think of as her own, and where Sarah would sometimes stay when she visited. The arrangement suited everyone perfectly. In the months and years that followed, Olivia and Travis built the life they dreamed of on that hilltop. They expanded the horse training operation, with Olivia's gift for gentling difficult animals becoming well known throughout the region. Thunder became the foundation of their breeding program, siring strong, intelligent foals that were in high demand. The ranch prospered under their joint management, and Travis never made a major decision without consulting Olivia first, treating her as the true partner she was. Margaret's health improved dramatically with good food, a warm home, and the joy of seeing her daughter so happy. She took over the management of the ranch's large vegetable garden and became known for her preserves and pickles, which Sarah sold in town for extra income. Timothy and Sarah eventually built their own home on the eastern section of the property and welcomed their first child, a daughter they named Mary, 2 years after Travis and Olivia's wedding. Olivia and Travis's first child came the following spring, a healthy boy with his father's blue eyes and his mother's dark hair. They named him Daniel, after Travis's father, and he was followed 2 years later by a daughter they named Grace. Both children grew up on the ranch, learning to ride before they could walk properly, just as their father had, and developing their mother's natural way with animals. On their 5th anniversary, Travis took Olivia back to the hilltop where he'd proposed. It was a warm evening in December, and they sat on a blanket watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of gold and crimson. "Do you remember what I told you that day in town?" Travis asked, playing with a lock of Olivia's long hair, which now cascaded down her back in thick waves. "About your hair growing back more beautiful?" "I remember," Olivia said, leaning against his shoulder. "You were right, it did." "I was right about more than that," Travis said. "You've grown more beautiful too in every way. Stronger, more confident, more yourself. Watching you become the woman you were always meant to be has been the greatest privilege of my life." Olivia turned to look at her husband, this man who had seen her at her lowest and offered her not just charity but genuine respect and opportunity. "I was so lost when you found me," she said softly. "I'd sold the one beautiful thing I had, and I thought I'd never feel valuable again." "You were always valuable," Travis said fiercely. "Your hair had nothing to do with it. That was just something you lost temporarily, but your courage, your strength, your compassion, those were always there. I just helped you see them again." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the ranch below come alive with lamplight as dusk deepened into night. Olivia could see Margaret in the cabin garden, probably harvesting late vegetables. She could see Timothy riding in from the south pasture, heading home to Sarah and little Mary. She could see their own children playing in the yard under the watchful eye of one of the ranch hands. "I used to think happiness was something that happened to other people," Olivia confessed. "After Father died, after we lost everything, I thought I'd spend the rest of my life just trying to survive. I never imagined I could have all this." "All what?" Travis asked, though she could hear the smile in his voice. "Everything," Olivia said, gesturing to the ranch spread out before them. "A home, a family, work that I love, a husband who treats me as an equal, children who will grow up knowing they're loved and valued, security and peace and joy, everything I ever dreamed of and more." Travis pulled her close and kissed the top of her head. "You know what the best part is?" "What?" "We're just getting started. We've got years and years ahead of us, Olivia. Decades, if we're lucky. And every single day, I'm going to wake up grateful that you walked into my life." "I didn't walk into your life," Olivia corrected with a laugh. "I ran into you while chasing a scarf, and you were kind enough to catch both of us before we fell." "Best catch I ever made," Travis said, and kissed her properly this time, with all the passion and tenderness of 5 years of marriage and a lifetime of love ahead. As the years continued to pass, the Vaughn Ranch became one of the most successful horse operations in Kansas. Olivia's reputation as a horse trainer grew, and people came from as far as Missouri to learn her methods. She wrote articles for agricultural journals about gentle training techniques, and she was occasionally asked to speak at cattlemen's associations and horse breeding conferences. Travis was always by her side at these events, proud and supportive, introducing her as his wife and partner. Their family grew as well. After Daniel and Grace came twin boys, Mark and Luke, who kept the entire household on their toes with their mischievous energy. And finally, 6 years into their marriage, came little Rebecca, who had her mother's curls and her father's eyes, and a fierce independence that promised she'd be a force to be reckoned with when she grew up. Margaret lived to see all 5 grandchildren born, and she passed peacefully in her sleep when Rebecca was 3, content in the knowledge that her daughter was safe, happy, and loved. They buried her on the hilltop where Travis had proposed and planted a cottonwood tree over her grave. Olivia grieved, but she also found comfort in knowing her mother's last years had been filled with joy instead of hardship. Timothy and Sarah had 3 more children after Mary, and the ranch became a lively place full of cousins playing together, learning to ride, helping with chores, and growing up with the kind of stability and security that their parents had worked so hard to build. On Sundays, both families would gather at the main house for dinner, and the table would be crowded with children and laughter and love. Thunder lived to be 20 years old, which was ancient for a stallion, and his offspring became the foundation stock for some of the finest horse herds in the region. When he finally passed, Olivia wept like she'd lost a family member, and Travis held her while she cried. They buried Thunder on ranch property with full honors and planted flowers on his grave every spring. As Olivia and Travis entered their 30s and then their 40s, their love only deepened. They'd weathered droughts and hard winters, cattle diseases and financial challenges, the normal trials of raising 5 children, and through it all, they'd remained each other's greatest support and comfort. They still worked side by side every day, still made all major decisions together, still found time to steal kisses in the barn when they thought no one was looking. On their 20th anniversary, their children threw them a surprise party at the ranch. Half the county showed up, including people Olivia hadn't seen in years. As she stood with Travis's arm around her waist, looking at the crowd of friends and family celebrating their love, Olivia thought back to that desperate girl who'd sold her hair for survival money. That girl had believed she'd lost everything that mattered. She'd been wrong. She'd lost hair, which had grown back. She'd lost a home, but found a better one. She'd lost security, but gained something far more valuable, a partnership built on mutual respect, trust, and genuine love. "What are you thinking about, ear?" Travis murmured in her ear. "How far we've come," Olivia said. "How different my life could have been if you hadn't caught my scarf that day." "I would have found some other excuse to talk to you," Travis said with a grin. "You think I was at that livery stable by accident? I'd seen you in town before, and I was working up the courage to introduce myself. When I saw you coming down the street that day, I decided it was fate giving me an opportunity." Olivia turned to stare at him. "You never told me that." "Some things are worth keeping mysterious," Travis teased, but then his expression grew serious. "But it's true, Olivia. I noticed you months before that day. There was something about you, even when you were at your lowest, that drew me to you. A strength, a dignity, a refusal to give up. I knew you were special long before I knew your name." "And now you're stuck with me forever," Olivia said, reaching up to touch his face, which was now weathered by years of sun and wind, but still as handsome to her as it had been the day they met. "Not stuck," Travis corrected. "Blessed. I'm blessed with you, Olivia Vaughn, every single day." They kissed while their children groaned with embarrassment and their friends cheered, and Olivia felt a rush of pure joy. This was happiness, she thought, not the absence of hardship, because they'd certainly had their share of that, but the presence of love, the security of knowing you were valued for who you truly were, the comfort of building something meaningful with someone who saw you as an equal partner. Her hair had grown back more beautiful, just as Travis had promised all those years ago. But more importantly, her life had grown back more beautiful, fuller and richer than she'd ever imagined possible. She'd learned that losing something, even something precious, wasn't the end. Sometimes it was the beginning of something better, something truer, something that lasted. As the party continued around them, with music and dancing and children running wild in the twilight, Travis held Olivia close and whispered in her ear, "I love you more today than I did yesterday, and I'll love you more tomorrow than I do today." "That's impossible," Olivia whispered back. "There's no room for more love. We're already full to bursting." "Then we'll make room," Travis said simply. "We'll keep growing together, keep building together, keep loving each other more with every year that passes." And that's exactly what they did. Daniel grew up to become a veterinarian, bringing his skills back to the ranch and the surrounding community. Grace married a school teacher and opened a school on the property for ranch children from miles around. Mark and Luke took over the cattle operation from their uncle Timothy when he retired, expanding it beyond anything their grandfather could have imagined. And Rebecca, fierce little Rebecca, became a horse trainer even more skilled than her mother, eventually writing a book about animal training methods that was used in universities across the country. Through it all, through children growing up and grandchildren arriving, through the turn of the century and all the changes that brought, Travis and Olivia remained at the heart of it all. They were the foundation upon which 3 generations built their lives, the example of what love and partnership could achieve when rooted in mutual respect and genuine affection. On their 50th anniversary, when Travis was 76 and Olivia was 71, they returned once more to the hilltop where so much of their story had unfolded. It was harder to make the climb now, and they had to rest several times on the way up, but they were determined. This was their place, their special spot, and they needed to see it once more. The ranch had changed dramatically over the decades. The main house had been expanded twice. There were now 4 separate family homes on the property, housing various children and grandchildren. The operation had grown to include not just horses and cattle, but also a successful breeding program for working dogs. Solar panels that young Rebecca had insisted they install gleamed on the barn roofs. But the essential character of the place remained the same: a family enterprise built on hard work, integrity, and love. "Do you have any regrets?" Travis asked as they sat together on the hilltop, watching the sunset just as they had so many times before. Olivia considered the question seriously. "I regret that my mother and father didn't live to see all of this," she said finally. "I wish they could have known their great-grandchildren, could have seen what we built. But regrets about my life with you? Not a single one." "Not even that I made you work in the stables?" Travis teased. "That I turned a proper lady into a ranch hand?" "I was never a proper lady," Olivia said with a laugh. "And you didn't make me do anything. You gave me the opportunity to discover who I really was. That's not something to regret. That's everything." Travis took her hand, his fingers intertwining with hers in a gesture that had become as natural as breathing over 5 decades together. "I told you that day in town that your hair would grow back more beautiful, but what I should have said was that you would grow more beautiful with or without hair, because that's what happened. Olivia, you bloomed. You became exactly who you were always meant to be." "We became who we were meant to be," Olivia corrected, "together. I couldn't have done any of this without you, Travis. You believed in me when I didn't believe in myself. You saw value in me when I felt worthless. You loved me when I thought I was unlovable." "You were always lovable," Travis said firmly. "Always valuable, always worthy. I just helped you remember that." As the sun sank below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of pink and orange and gold, Olivia leaned her head on Travis's shoulder and thought about the strange journey that had brought her to this moment, the desperation that had led her mother to sell her hair, the chance encounter with a kind cowboy who caught her scarf, The risk of accepting help from a stranger, the courage it had taken to admit she'd fallen in love, the leap of faith required to build a life with someone. Every choice, every risk, every moment of courage had led her here, to this hilltop, to this man, to this life that exceeded her wildest dreams. Her hair had grown back, just as Travis had promised, but more importantly, she had grown back. She'd recovered from loss and hardship and despair to build something beautiful and lasting. "Thank you," she whispered to Travis as stars began to appear in the darkening sky. "For what?" he asked. "For catching me when I fell. For seeing me when I felt invisible. For loving me when I needed it most. For building this life with me. For everything." Travis kissed her temple, his lips gentle against her silver hair. "The pleasure has been entirely mine, Mrs. Vaughn. Every single moment of it." They sat together on that hilltop until the moon rose. Two people who had found each other in the most unlikely circumstances and built a love that had lasted a lifetime. Below them, the ranch they'd created together glowed with light and life, a testament to what was possible when two people committed to building something together with honesty, respect, and love. The little girl who had sold her hair for survival would have been amazed to see this future. But Olivia Vaughn, looking back on 7 decades of a life well lived, understood that losing her hair had never been the tragedy it had seemed at the time. It had been the beginning of her real story, the moment when everything changed, the catalyst that had brought her to Travis and to this life. Hair grew back, love endured, and sometimes, when you lost what you thought defined you, you discovered something far more valuable underneath. You discovered who you really were, what you were truly capable of, and if you were very lucky, you found someone who saw all of that and loved you for it. As Travis helped her back down the hill, supporting her when the path was steep, just as he'd been supporting her for 50 years, Olivia felt nothing but gratitude for the hardship that had made her strong, for the cowboy who had seen her worth, for the life they'd built together, for every moment, difficult and joyful alike, that had brought her to this place of peace and contentment. Her mother had sold her hair to a wig maker for coins, a desperate act in a desperate time. But from that moment of despair had come everything good in Olivia's life, because it had led her to Travis, who had said those prophetic words that turned out to be far more true than he'd known at the time. It will grow back more beautiful, and it had, everything had.